Hi everyone, my name is Victoria Cardwell. I'm a data engineer here at Starburst. So I'm here today to go through a quick tutorial about just being able to use Starburst Galaxy to connect to your data lake and start analyzing data using Galaxy. So let's go ahead and start. So for this, I wanted to explore women in technology. So I thought about education. I find myself to be a perpetual student. I enjoy being in higher education, so I wanted to see if I could find some data that talked about that, and I was able to find something. So I came over here to the Integrated Postsecondary Education Data System, so a lot of data about people in higher education. So when I went to go explore the data, I just typed in computer science. This is a big degree for fellow software engineers and other people in technology. So I found this data set, right? So it gives us a bunch of years and totals of students enrolled in various different programs, and they do break it out by male and female. So I thought this would be a great data set to explore. And so I took this data that you get in an Excel format and did some magic and landed it here in my S3 bucket, which is primarily what I use in my personal and professional life for my data lake storage. So I have a bucket here, Starburst Playground. I created a folder for my IPEDS data, and we can go ahead and take a look at it. So data engineers, typically their job is to get that data ready for you in a data lake, right? So data engineers take data from some source and bring it into a data lake so that it can be used downstream by maybe further by the data engineer, by analysts, by managers, by leaders, by a bunch of different kinds of people. There's a lot of different hats that data engineers can wear. There's a lot of different roles that they can take on, a lot of different duties they can take on. But I would say, generally speaking, that is the data engineer's job, is to get that data from the source to the data lake so that it's ready to be used. So if you can look at the data here, it's all the same data, just in a different format. And I can see here immediately, right, our year is a varchar or a string of some sort. This is something we can clean up using Galaxy. But yep, that's what our data looks like. And the first thing we're going to want to do is create a cluster for us to run on. So this is my Galaxy account. So if you don't have a Starburst Galaxy account, go ahead to Starburst Galaxy and create an account. It's free. This one's my account, so if you're here, if you're logged in, then you're right where you need to be. We can go ahead and start the tutorial. Okay, so the first thing we're going to want to do is create a cluster. So we'll go to admin, clusters, create a cluster. So this is going to be a free cluster. And a cluster is really just the computing environment. So this is what's giving all of the power to the query to be executed when we write it. So I'm going to just call it my demo cluster. So I'm going to do like demo VC. You can call yours demo your initials, or really anything you want to create this cluster. So I'm going to do standard. There are other ones like fault tolerant and accelerated. These are much faster and for use for very large data sets. We have a small data set, so I'm not too concerned about the speed here. And then we also want to do a free cluster, so these aren't even an option for us. I'm going to keep everything else the same, or everything on the default, because again, this is a small data set, very, very small, and it's since we're doing a tutorial or a demo, there's really no reason to be charging any money to this, right? So I'm going to create the cluster. Oh, my cloud region, that's right. I'm going to do US East, North Virginia. I'm in New York, the New York City area, so I'm just going to choose the one closest to me. You can go ahead and choose the location closest to you as well. So I'll create the cluster. Perfect, and you should see that starting up right away. All right, so once our cluster is running, we can go ahead and connect our data via our catalogs. So we can create a catalog here, and we can create catalog. And you can think of a catalog as the connection into the data. So the cluster has all the power behind it. The catalog is the connection or that portal into the data. So we have ours in an Amazon S3, I'll call it a data lake. You can see there's a bunch of other options here. but we're going to do this here, and I'm going to call it, I guess, like a computer science demo. I'll do Starburst tutorial data. And then I'm going to use an access key and secret for my connection here. So I'm going to add this. I'm using this secret or this access key here for this tutorial. I'll delete it afterwards. I know that my table format is in Hive because I worked with the data. We're going to put in this location here, right? So my bucket is Starburst Playground, and I'm in the IPEDS catalog, our default directory or directory name here. And then we're going to allow for creating and writing 2 external tables, and then we're going to test our connection. Perfect. So I'm going to connect my catalog, and this is where they're going to ask us to add it to a cluster so that we can actually run queries against this data, right? So what's good is the portal of data if we don't have any power backing it up so that we can learn something from it. So I'm going to go ahead and click this. Okay, good. And then you see they're asking us a question. So would you like to run schema discovery? I'm going to say yes. So schema discovery is going to take a look at that path that we gave it. It's going to take a look at the data that's there. It's going to analyze the schema, and then it's going to recommend some tables to us, and then we'll select that we want those tables to be created, and then it'll run all the SQL for us to have those tables created. So let's go ahead and show you how that works. So I'm going to run schema discovery. We have to give it our location, so you could copy it also here, and I could do that this way. And then for this, I'm going to just call the schema something like source. I like that a little bit better just to show that's where the source data comes in. You could have kept it the discovered schema. You could really name it anything you want that aligns with the standards that you follow. So I'm going to hit create schema, or go ahead and discover the schema. And then you could see, right, so this is the source. This is the schema that things are going to be created under. And it's telling us it found one table. And they're calling this table IPEDS. That's the location that it is. And they're gonna name the table the location. So I'm gonna say create those tables, or create that table. And now behind the scenes here, it's generating and running the SQL, and it gives us back the SQL that is ran. So the first one is creating that schema. If it doesn't exist, that was the first time I created that schema. And the second one is saying, is creating the table after it determined the different columns that were in that schema and the different type of formatting and the location and all that. So if I didn't use schema discovery, I would have to know the schema and then create this query myself and run it. But it is nice in some cases, like I said, like a data engineering team might drop this data. If an analyst is setting up a table, they might not know all of the data. So to have Starburst Galaxy do that for you is a really powerful tool, and it's something that I use a lot. All right, so we can go ahead and hit finish. Okay, and now we can go ahead and start exploring this data, right? So I'm going to refresh this. So now I see our catalog. You could just explore it a little bit. So there's the schema that we created, and here's that IPEDS table here, right? So it has all those fields that we recognized, and we can go here and say, let's query the data. Excellent. So I could do this, and we can select any. Let's see what's in this table. Let's see what that data looks like in our Galaxy interface. Okay, great, and here we go. So we have our year, and then all of these totals, and number of those enrolled. So this looks good. This looks like we have all the data we could possibly need. I'm seeing some things, so like the date this year we're gonna have to clean up. And I did notice another thing here. So we'll have to clean up the year, and I also noticed looking through this data that we do have an outlier of how they do this date. So I think the next thing we should do is just clean up these dates so that we know what we're working with. And after we clean up those dates, we can put this in a view so that we can always see the cleaned up option, right? So I have a query here I'm going to paste in, and we're going to take a look at that data, right? So we're going to create this view called CS Student Total, and I'm going to change this to CS Demo. So we'll go, so this is our catalog, our schema, and then the view that we're going to be creating. And I have this query that selects from our table here. So I'll just make sure that that's the right one. And what I want to do is basically just clean up this date here, right? So we have this year that's a varchar. So I'm going to use split part. So everything before the hyphen, we're going to take as our year, and then we're going to add a month and a day to show the first day of the year. And then we're going to do the same thing for the second half of that varchar, or everything after the hyphen, where we clean that up. But I do call out here if it's that 1999 to 2000 that I know is already a problem, that we do a little extra cleanup here. But generally speaking, we're just like splitting these apart and then adding the 2 digits in front of this year. So I'm just going to go ahead and create that view. And then I'm going to do this again, and we should be able to see it. Yep. So I'm going to erase this. And then we could just do select any, and we could just see what that data looks like a preview of that data. Oh, and it looks much better here. So we could see our start year, and then the year it ends, and then all the other data looks good. So, but these are going to be easier to work with because they're actually dates. You could see here, these are dates before the year was in a varchar, and this is going to speed up performance, and it's also going to allow us to just work with the data easier. Okay, so now that we have this data ready, we can run some analysis and try to gather some insight. So I have a query here that's going to look at the male versus the female enrollment growth over time. So there's this lag function, and this will look at a row and then look at the previous row before it to give us the difference. And we're going to look at the previous row by the start year, right? So we're going to look at year over year. What does that growth look like? So let's just go ahead and take a look at this, right? So we'll see that this is the growth rate from the year before, right? So 2021 saw a growth rate of 2,035 for males, and 1,585 for female enrollments. And then you can go down the list here. This is the difference. And just from this, right, so I'm not a data scientist or some kind of analytics person, but I do like to play around with this data a little bit. And a little bit from what I can see here is that it does seem like the male enrollment rate is a lot higher. I would say a lot higher than the female enrollment rate, right? We see like more than double in all of them except for 2021. But it is good to see, right? Like we could see that it does increase, right? I don't know what happened in 2021. This might be something to do with the pandemic. But it is, there is some steady increases, right, over the time. But it just does not keep up with the male students. So this just tells us that it's still very heavily male. I see that we're trending that way, right? We're trending males growing more. And while there are more female, I don't see that gap closing with this kind of trend. But it is interesting, right? Because now you can start thinking like, oh, okay, well, this is telling us that maybe a school can look at this and say, hey, maybe our our efforts aren't really doing exactly what we want them to do, right? Like we're getting more enrollments every year, and that's a good thing. But if we're not seeing the female growth going up higher, that means maybe some execution isn't really landing, and you might want to adjust your plan. But yeah, that was my tutorial, right? This is a function to just help you gather more insights. You can run a bunch of different queries on this now that you have data and it's all cleaned up and ready to go. Yeah, but you can see, like, in less than an episode of one of your favorite sitcoms, we're able to connect into data and run queries and just learn a lot about the data that we have using Starburst Galaxy. So thank you for joining me in this, and have a great day.